they say. Ooh, I like this chair. That's
First time sitting in
it is. I usually get one of those smaller guys. I'm like, my knees are up to here.
it? Yeah.
All right.
All right.
So, how was your day today? How was?
Oh, we're live.
Doing well.
We're live. Oh, now we're live. Okay. Let me just pull up my notes.
Sure.
Okay. I see no changes have been made to these notes, so that's good. Oh wait, no. I might be wrong. Okay.
I didn't change anything.
So, good day.
Good day.
So Clinton is. Do you have a middle name?
Taylor.
No way.
Yeah, I think some people here know that.
Okay. I had no idea. Clinton Taylor.
Clinton Taylor Parker. Uh-huh.
Wow.
That is me, the one and only.
So, how long ago were you in high school?
Graduated in 2006.
Okay.
Many years ago.
Old.
Wow.
Yeah. Might be before some of you were born, maybe.
So,
Yeah.
there's some that were born in 2013. My jaw dropped. I was like, 2013, young. Did you have faith and grow up in a faithful
Yeah,
family?
I grew up in a Christian home. We went to church every week, but I wouldn't say that I was a Christian myself. I kind of went through the motions and things, but I definitely never understood the aspect of grace. I never understood really what the gospel was all about. I mean, I felt like I did up here, but it didn't really change much. So yeah.
Was this locally?
So I'm from New York originally.
Okay.
Yes,
What-
I'm from New York.
Whereabouts?
I was born in Manhattan, but I pretty much lived and grew up in Staten Island.
Okay.
So,
And what denomination did you guys practice when you were out there?
it was like non-denominational, so just kind of your general evangelical church.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did they have a youth group?
They did. It was a very large youth group, actually. Yeah, very, very large. I think when we were rocking, it was like 80 to 100. I mean, the church itself was like 1,600 to 2,000. So it was a large church.
Yeah, that was a big church. Wow. Are they still practicing and they're still up and
They're
running?
still around, yeah.
Okay.
Not as big now, but yeah, they're still there.
Okay. Nice. And did any of those students from youth group also go to your school?
No, so I was homeschooled actually
Oh.
for most of my life. If you couldn't tell, that's why I'm a little off sometimes. But no, sometimes.
Sorry,
homeschool
that hit
kids
me
are a
funny.
little, yeah. So no, I went. So I was homeschooled for most of my life. Then I ended up going to school in New Jersey for high school, Timothy Christian School in Piscataway. If anyone has ever heard of that, it's like
No.
okay, well yeah, you guys are a little farther down.
So did your parents drive you or what?
Yep,
what
they
caused
drove me,
them-
carpooled, went there.
Why homeschooling? Did they have just taking like public
Just
schools?
they preferred that, I guess. So yeah, over public schools. Public schools in New York are not great.
Okay.
So a lot of drama and things that happen there. But yeah, but high school was interesting. Definitely very awkward phase. None of you here are in that phase, of course.
What year did you transfer from homeschool to going out to Piscataway?
Junior year,
Oh,
Oh,
right.
you didn't even start high school?
Oh,
I never had a
man.
chance. Yeah, I went to school for 1
Poor
year
guy.
in 6th grade and I hated it. But yeah, that was so yeah, that was rough. Those last couple of years were rough. But it was also those years and then like the next year after I graduated that were very pivotal, I guess, in just my life in general because I grew up Christian, but I did not follow. I ended up actually getting really having some problems, I guess, with Christianity, stuff that didn't make sense, whether in the Bible or things I heard, and I kind of ended up rejecting it completely. Ended up becoming an atheist. Anyone know what an atheist is?
Yeah.
Yeah, someone who doesn't believe in God at all. And so at that point, I started really, I've been sheltered, obviously, being homeschooled for so many years. And I kind of wanted to see what the world was about. Is it really as bad as Christians say? The guy in the front is like, okay, my friends aren't that bad. We don't do anything that bad. But I wanted to see, how bad things were. Just if it was enjoyable. They say it's bad, but if it's fun, if it's good, then what's the big deal, really? So yeah, I kind of started to go down a certain path. Ended up hanging around a lot of people that were not from church. got into smoking and drinking, and very quickly after got into like a lot of drugs too. And I went down that road pretty hard, pretty fast as well too. I was definitely addicted to a lot. I mean, I did pills. I don't need to bore you, I guess, with some of those details, but
Did your parents know, like, were they able to visually see, oh, he's slowly going?
my dad, because my dad actually had a drug history as well when he was younger. So that's also interesting to know, kind of the troubles that your family have, your grandparents. A lot of that you'll end up seeing that same stuff, whether it's depression or anger or drug abuse or divorce. It's interesting how some of those things in your family tree will affect how you function as well.
Did they ever come alongside you and try and figure out what was going on, or did you have someone in your life that could have?
Not many. No, many people, especially in church, once you didn't look and talk a certain way, they didn't really care, I guess, as much. I mean, but also I didn't really care for them either. But yeah, I mean, I dressed definitely differently. A lot of black band shirts. I actually had a lot of piercings. I don't remember how many actually. Yeah, I had gauges. I had the industrial piercing. If you know that one, that's the bar. Two eyebrow. I had this one was my favorite, I think. It was a spike coming out right here. Totally cool, right? Yeah. But yeah. I had a mohawk as well too. I used to dye that. That was cool. I think that's the right word.
Yeah. That's the word you want.
Were you able to? How were you living like this dual lifestyle? This is what you were doing outside of like the church, but you were still living at home. Like, were you hiding it from?
I mean, I kind of abandoned church once I kind of got down this. I was over 18, so I didn't go to church really at all anymore. I had worked, but it was at some point it became kind of hard to have a good job to kind of keep down the job. But I mean, yeah, it was just I would go to concerts, go to clubs, just hang out and drink as much as I could, do drugs as much as I could. I even actually was the dealer for a little bit too. But that didn't work out so well because you don't make money when you're the one hitting your stash more than anyone else. So I got at least to do it for mostly free. But I mean, but at times it was basically I was going through almost like $100 worth of substances a day. So yeah, and I had worked for several years, but I was like just eating away at my money. And at a certain point, so obviously my parents, were wise enough to know that something was wrong from the very different way I was dressed. Also, I mean, I'm pretty skinny now, I'm about like 150, but when I was like really, really hard into drugs, I was around 115. So if you can imagine how skinny that was, like, like the cheeks and sunken eyes. You can always tell when someone's on drugs, whether it's just like the dark circles around their eyes or their pupils are different sizes or their bloodshot, right? There's a lot of that. So I just looked bad. So yeah, so eventually, actually, some point they kind of giving me many chances. I mean, I was a terrible son. I mean, if you guys hear about when someone's addicted, they'll pretty much do anything. So I used to take like a 20 here and there from them. I used to steal money. So obviously a lot of stuff I'm not proud of. But when you're not willing to have God as your God, you will make something else your God. And He's the only one that is actually looking after you. Everything else pretty much eats away at you, takes something away from you and gives back something less. That's especially the truth with drugs or alcohol, right?
Yeah.
So.
How did you? Was it a friend that started you?
They're friends from church.
Okay, they were the one that introduced you to.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
But I mean, it's one of those things too. I'm sure when you guys go to school, even if it's a new school or if you're at a youth group or whatever, the people who are popular, you kind of pick up on that. The people who are jocks, the jocks find each other. The people who are potheads, you find the other pothead. You can just tell. People who are into skating or whatever, skateboarding or whatever, you can tell. So yeah, through church.
So at what point, going down this dark pathway, trying to fill your heart with stuff that's just not going to fill it and just eat away at it, did you just say, this is enough?
That took a while. I'm a very stubborn, headstrong person. So after a certain point, my parents had kind of had enough. They kicked me out actually. So, and it's also funny how you see who your true friends are. Really didn't have any of my druggy, degenerate friends help me out. So I pretty much was immediately homeless actually. So this is in New York, so it wasn't too bad, I guess you could say. They have trains, you know, you can go on and like kind of knock out for an hour or so. It was during partially in the summer, so I could just sleep at like a park bench or something too. It wasn't too bad. But yeah, not great. Believe it or not, that wasn't rock bottom. Yeah. So that wasn't rock bottom. So yeah, I was homeless. The other thing too is some of the drugs I was taking were something called hallucinogenics. So it's stuff that makes you see more than like what you can actually see now, right? So you're seeing things that aren't there, hearing things that aren't there. And I would say that certain things in life, whether it's drugs or whether it's sex or a lot of things are gateways that allow something else to enter your life, right? For me, it was a literal something. I don't know if you guys have been around church a lot or, you know, see pictures of angels or, you know, those are the good things, but there's also the bad, demons. There were some, I don't want to really scare you guys too much. I know this is heavy stuff. This is real stuff though for me. Demons exist. There are some that I used to see when high, and then there are some that eventually started hanging around all the time. So, like wherever I was, there was always 3 or 4, like kind of hooded, cloaked demons that would just follow me around. I would go to sleep, and they were there. I would look out my window, they were there. Would be hearing stuff as well too.
Did they scare you? Were you?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I was so before I was starting to see them. I would only hear them, and it was just in little bits and pieces. If you know anybody that's, or you've ever heard the term schizophrenia, that's kind of like that, right? You're seeing and hearing things that aren't there. Doesn't necessarily mean that's always a demon, but in my case, it was. But I mean, I was so paranoid at times, like. So, you know, I would take a Staten Island ferry, and there's people that work there, cops that walk around, and like, you know, the walkie-talkies. I swear that there was like this conspiracy that I was hearing cops and the people working there talking on their walkie-talkie about me. And like, we gotta track them down, we gotta, you know, like just nuts stuff, right? So yeah, so I mean, I was homeless, so I had demonic stuff happening. If you've ever seen someone, you know, in the movies, or even just, you've been to New York and seen someone on the sidewalk just kind of like tweaking and like moving, like talking or screaming, right? That I was like, that pretty much was me. I was not all there. So, but believe it or not, that wasn't the rock bottom either. Okay. Having drugs, having demonic activity was not enough.
Prior to doing all drugs, and everything, were you like a straight A student? Were you pretty good academically? You were pretty head smart and.
Oh yeah, I was a straight A student. Yeah. So my parents had actually let me back in at one point, and.
Did they come look for you, or were you just kind of?
Well,
like
when they first kicked me out, it was really tough because we had cats at the time. They were actually going on vacation. Okay. So the plan was they gave me a time limit to go on vacation to leave the house and get kicked out because it was actually so difficult for them. They wanted to go on vacation, and they did that because they just couldn't be around for a couple of weeks when this happened. They changed the locks. We had cats at that time, so they had someone that would come by and watch the cats. And my parents said to me, if he sees you lurking around here, we're gonna call the cops on you. So like, we can't deal with this anymore. We're going to see family in Michigan for a little bit. And so that was tough. And I remember later on when after, you know, obviously I reconciled with my parents, my mom said that she thought the next time she would see me would be in one of 2 places. When they drove away that day and they left me just walking away from the house, she thought that she would either see me in a lineup, you know, from being arrested, or in the morgue. I mean, there's so many times I used to like black out or like OD, and I don't remember how I got home or anything. So that was very, very likely. But once again, that wasn't rock bottom for me. So my parents did actually let me back in for a little bit at one point. I started kind of running out of money, and my girlfriend and I had broken up, and I couldn't stay, with her or anything. And it was definitely getting tough. So at one point though, and I think what kind of was the catalyst for me to kind of turn away from this stuff, right? Because I grew up in church, I knew stuff, I knew the Bible, but nothing was transformed. So one night I woke up and I felt something, a definite different presence, right? So I'll explain one thing to you. So demonic presence, when you're around it, maybe you think it's funny or weird at first, but eventually it becomes very terrifying. But this presence was as terrifying as that, and yet also incredibly comforting and beautiful. It was the strangest polar opposite of feelings at the same time. This being spoke. It ended up being Jesus. But also what's funny too is I was so stubborn that you think maybe I'm going to say something positive like, oh, he loves me, come back home or something. That actually even wasn't the case for me. For me, Jesus was basically saying, you've been in church, you've known about me your whole life, you think you know me, but you don't. You think maybe at some point you were serving me or you called me Lord and Savior, but that's not true. It's never been me sitting on the throne it's never been me sitting on the throne of your heart, it's only been you. And he said, and if you don't repent and come to me, I will take you from this earth. And he kind of gave me a time limit too. And believe it or not, that still wasn't, even Jesus coming to me was not enough, because that's how hard my heart was.
Did you talk to anybody about
I
this?
talked to Stephen shortly after this, actually. It was one of the only, that's Jenna's husband, by the way.
Jenna Stephen, okay.
Jenna Stephen, yeah.
Wait, how did you know Jenna Stephen?
He was a youth leader at the time when I was in youth group.
Wait a minute.
Because
Stephen's from Staten Island?
Yeah.
So Stephen was your youth group leader?
One of the ones, yeah.
Wow, okay.
We go way back. He was one of the only ones that, because of his past as well, like with certain drugs, like he was the only one that, like, well, I guess maybe was not scared off or whatever, or thought that I was still worth talking to. So I met up with him, and this is after I kind of moved back home as well. So, and I kind of has asked him like, hey, how did you get clean? What did you do? Because even though Jesus had come to me, I still wanted to see if I could find another solution outside of him. And I was like, I know someone that's used to do drugs and I turned my life around. And it was kind of almost a casual conversation. I didn't share anything about like the weird supernatural stuff with him that day. And so it still wasn't like convinced. I wasn't convinced. Now, once again, I said kind of Jesus gave me kind of like this time limit, right? Not an exact time limit, but it was like a feeling, certainly. I remember kind of coming home, and it had been a few days, and I hadn't done actually drugs for a couple of days, so I knew that what I was starting to see was not just my imagination, it was real. Like I said, I had seen demons. They had kind of just been lingering always with me. Do you guys ever watch the Discovery Channel and you've seen like, whatever, you're watching like a show about Africa and there's like the gazelles or the deer and there's like the pack of hyenas that kind of are always near the back, right? Lions will actually attack the gazelle. Hyenas will typically stay near the back and they'll wait for the sick or the injured or the old one to just fall behind, and then I started to feel and see that I was that one that was starting to linger. Right? Reality started to shift in a way where there was not just a few, there was more, and it's like something was just holding them back from just feasting on me. It was as if they were just kind of sitting there like, almost like rubbing their hands, being like, we're this close. Like, as soon as we get the word, man, and that you're ours and your life is done, you like, they were like in my room. That's actually started when I really started to freak out. Reality started to shift. So I started praying, and I decided to grab a Bible and to kind of randomly open it, because I was like, God, if you're real, not if you're real, I want to stop lying to myself and saying that you aren't real. So, and you're not really supposed to do this. I would never recommend this to anybody, but I decided just to randomly open the Bible and read a verse and see what it said, if it could apply to me. I randomly opened the Bible. It's Luke chapter 12, verse 3 and 4. And what it says is, do not fear the one who, after he has done harm to you, can do nothing else. But I tell you the one that you should fear. Fear the one who has authority to cast you into hell. And that's exactly what Jesus has said. What's really strange about that passage is it's an incredibly, it's like an emotional roller coaster after that. So Jesus threatens to, hey, fear God who chooses where you will go in the next life. But the very next verse after that one, where he talks about you might go to hell, completely changed. The next verse after that is, but do you not know how loved you are? That the very hairs on your hair are numbered, that a sparrow does not fall without me knowing, so how much more valuable are you? Right? So, cast into hell, but incredibly loved at the same time. And the rest of that passage kind of goes on, and there's this back and forth that happens, and it was just, eventually I was like, okay, God, I think I get the message. I keep reading through chapter 12. The beginning of chapter 13 is a parable, actually, where a vineyard owner comes to a vineyard, and this person is taking care of the vineyard, and he says, hey, what's going on? Or maybe not vineyard, maybe figs or something. He says, hey, what's going on with these figs over here? There's no fruit. And he says, well, I was about to pick it up and cast it and and cut it off and then cast it into the fire. And then the vineyard owner says, no, wait one more season, add some fertilizer to it, and see if fruit grows. If it doesn't, then you can throw it in the fire. So, once again, there's this, it's a parable, but it's exactly what Jesus and kind of my circumstance was saying, that, hey, I've been very, very gracious to you. I'm the owner of you. I'm the owner. I'm the vineyard owner. And if you do not turn to me, if you do not bear fruit, there's nothing but fire waiting, right? And I know that sometimes we don't talk about hell in church, and right, it's not fun or necessarily a good thing to talk about. For me, I was so stubborn and prideful, I feel like that was the only way that God was going to break me, to make me see my need for him. So then I ended up closing the Bible, praying, falling down on the ground, actually, just crying. I actually do not remember even what I said. But as soon as I opened my eyes, everything in the room was different. Not like it was different colors, it just was different. Felt like a pinprick in my soul of just, I don't know, life or light, like a tingling throughout my entire body. I felt like, well, I also noticed when I'm looking around that there's nothing but my room now. And for people who haven't struggled with any mental issues or don't know anybody that struggled with mental issues, right? It's one thing to say, okay, I have peace now, right? But to have peace and silence in your head is an incredible gift that most people don't even know how good of a gift that is when you're not crazy. I had peace, but I also had peace in the midst of silence in that mind. Yeah, and sorry, I don't remember what
Did
I
you still
started. I don't even know how I
So
got
I-
there, but yeah.
I can't personally relate, but my father had schizophrenia and he had the same
Mm.
issues that going on hearing stuff in his head and stuff
Mm.
like that. So I could very relate to that. But as you were slowly, your eyes were slowly being opened, did you
Mm.
still have those doubts in the back of your mind of like, okay, like God, I'm believing, but like,
You mean after becoming a Christian?
after you fell on the
I
ground.
think at
and-
some point, and in some aspect, no, because I had been through so much, and that it would actually, as insane as I was, it would actually be insanity to think anything other than Jesus saved me and He's real. But in the day to day, of course, there's doubts, there's struggles. But I mean, faith and doubt aren't as opposite as people think. It's just a matter of one, you feel a certain way, one, you doubt, and then you choose to let that doubt be the thing that overcomes you and your only response. And faith is simply believing in spite of doubt sometimes. So it's the same thing. It's almost like the same thing between like courage and fear, right? Courage is in the absence of fear, the response to fear. So yeah, so even for me, as much as I've been through, do I still sin? Do I still doubt? Do I still struggle? Do I still not treat my wife or my boys perfectly all the time? Of course, unfortunately.
Now, it's easy. I can imagine it'd be easy making friends at church, but how was it difficult trying to get your parents back on your side?
I don't think so. I think they knew. So one of the things when you're on drugs and when you have mental issues, you can sometimes tell that by just looking at someone's eyes. My mom said that when that happened, this was Saturday night late when this happened. I woke up on Sunday morning and I told her I'm going to church, and she was like, "What?" But she says later that day when I told them what happened the night before, she was like, "I knew it. I knew it. When I looked at you, there was no longer this darkness in your eyes that I had seen for years. It was like I was seeing my son again for the first
Got
time."
her son back. Yeah.
She knew. It was also tough because I wasn't entirely clean with drugs after that.
Okay.
For the most part, I was. I still, smoked weed and drank and did it. Well, a couple things. I was trying to kind of like witness to my friends, but it just wasn't really working. And but eventually, I remember I had gone to a house party, and I had drank like a whole bottle of Jägermeister. I drank like a few hits of ecstasy and stuff too, and I like blacked out again. And after that, I specifically remember telling my boys, "All right, see you. I'll see you tomorrow." And I remember walking back to the train saying, "I'm never seeing them again." And what I did was, I came home, I turned off my phone, and I kept it off for an entire month. And I did not leave. And I actually told my parents too. I was like, "I'm mostly clean, but I gotta, whether it's going through withdrawals or anything else, like, I will not leave this house, except for church."
Disconnect.
Yeah.
Were you able to find community or some type of community at church?
Sure. So the church I've been going to was a church that was in the hood. It was across the street from the projects, and like that demographic, like in the same way, I don't know, from my background, homeschooling, certain, I don't know like hood life, but I know street life well enough. So there was definitely an overlap there. And
Was this the same church that was the 1,600 people? Or was it a different church?
No, that church was too polished.
Okay.
You had to be a certain way. No,
Oh.
this church was like, I don't know, stuff was like drywall falling. I don't know, Jen, you've been there. It's just, you go in there and you're like, it was like an old sanitation warehouse that they like put stuff
They put
around.
it in-
Yeah, and it's not pretty. But people knew that like if you're there, it's because you really actually love Jesus, not to be emotionally moved by the
beautiful
song
walls
or
and-
get free stuff. It's like you have to be able to, love Jesus for the most part. So that community was good.
How did you find this community?
That was Stephen's church at that point.
So, how did you connect with? That's what I'm trying to get.
So
to
after this
connect.
kind of happened, he was the one I called him and says, "Hey, can I go to church with you?"
So he was at the Polished Church.
No, he had helped out there, but he had
Okay.
been going. He was at this other church in the hood, so he was the one I called up, and then I stayed at that church for over a decade. That's where I met my wife as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you meet her? You're like, hey, how are you? Let's go out for some coffee.
No, well,
What's your number?
I met her.
Pick up
We're
lines?
we're we have an age gap, So when,
Okay.
when I first met her, she was young. I don't know how else to say this. Obviously, there was
that's good.
nothing. I mean, nothing going on. And but what's funny though too is so she was a pastor's daughter too. So and I was obviously like looked and acted a certain way. So there was a little bit of a disconnect there. But the person I started getting mentored by was actually her dad.
Oh, cool.
And
What kind
so
of church? Non-denominational as well?
like Pentecostal.
Okay.
Yeah. So you know, I had been mentored by him, and we had kind of you know Bible study and certain things. We actually ended up even going on a mission trip together to India, just me and him.
Nice.
And it was kind of like way after this, like 7-8 years after this stuff that you know maybe like things started to shift maybe in how we saw each other. I mean, obviously, like once she had graduated high school and she had joined, I think you went to the like the young adult Bible study a little bit, and it was more of like a, oh, you're not a kid anymore. And so we kind of started talking a little bit. But I have to say though, the thing that was I think the first attraction was, if you ever wanted to know where Nidhi was in the church, all you had to do was look for the young couple that has the baby, and that's where she is. And same thing for me. If you ever wanted to know where I was, just look for like the massive pile of like boys climbing on someone, and that was me. So we both saw in each other that there was an extreme value placed on kids and family, and kind of like that fatherly and motherly aspect, which, you know, when you're from New York, maybe everyone's kind of got that chip on their shoulder. They got like that very hard exterior, but we were like, no, I love kids, I love young people. I'm very comfortable around, you know, that, and you know.
How did you ask her out?
Well, that took a while too, because, well, I'm old school too. So I kind of told her a little bit of an interest. I'd also said I would be praying for God to bring someone into my life. And I said, I think, like, you're at least a possibility. I was going to say, you.
You're a possibility. It's not a
Don't
no.
You're on the board.
Yeah, well, because that's the whole, like, God told me to date you. And it's like, that's weird, because then the person can just say, well, God told me to break up with you, so okay, whatever, yeah. Like, that's just, don't use that link, because that's awkward. But, so I had talked with her, and there was a little bit of like, okay, maybe, and we started talking, but I mean, I went to her dad and, you know, to ask permission to date, because it's also like Asian, very, you know,
Tradition's a little bit different.
don't do anything behind parents' back, but, I mean, he said no, so.
Oh, he said no. But that didn't discourage you.
No, but I had to wait 2 years for her.
Why 2 years?
Because she was still in college.
Okay.
And actually, so was I. So I kind of looked like a late bloomer. Like I went back to school in my 20s, and
Okay.
yeah. So I had to wait.
So
But
you guys got reconnected. I guess she was at church.
I mean, we didn't like fully stop talking. I mean, we were still talking. We were still seeing each other. We were in ministry. You know, we still had like a relationship. We definitely were still hanging out and stuff. But it wasn't in any like official capacity.
Where did you take her for the first date?
Well, I mean, first official date, or I don't even remember. Oh, I know. Was it that place in the city where I
Octopus ball?
yeah, the octopus.
Octopus bar?
Not actual, but like octopus
Like an all you
mix in the octopus meatballs. Yeah,
Octopus meatballs?
yeah. It was a Japanese place.
Oh.
I'm very like into like ethnic food and stuff.
Okay.
So
How did you address to her like what you've been through? Like, were you a little
which you
afraid?
kind of knew.
Okay, because you had conversations over the years.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, in general, like they kind of knew that I was, you know, from that. Like I generally had a past. Maybe not some of the details. I mean, even a lot of the details I still haven't necessarily told her. There's no point. Really. No point in necessarily over focusing on that.
And then when did you decide that this was the person I'm going to marry?
Although, actually, if we want to,
We can.
if we want, do we just maybe want to do the lesson next week or something? We could do that, or just if we want to keep doing this, or questions, or I mean, it's just because I don't know. Okay. Okay. I mean, but if they want to hear more, if you want to
You're doing the lesson, right?
Games, I'm also doing the lesson.
Yeah, see, you got all the power.
More of this? Yeah. Okay, so maybe we'll just play it by ear.
We'll play it by ear.
Well, wait, how did you know that she was the one?
Well, I'll answer that in this way. I don't necessarily think I don't believe in soulmates. I'm not sure if that's a biblical idea, but I do believe so. There's not necessarily the one for you, but especially after you get married, well, that is your one. There is no one else.
I guess when did you know that this was the person I'm going to be
Like we
married
both know,
to?
like early on, like before even soon after, within a few months.
Okay.
Within a few months, we had known for sure. We'd already, because the other thing is too, we kind of had a very intentional way about going about this. There's obviously some connection, but we were like, we're not going to let emotions just run wild. We had some very serious, like one-on-one conversations in the very beginning before we were talking this, because I'm also of the mind that, I mean, dating just to date is not good. Dating to date means you end up getting hurt a lot more than, when you can have certain conversations. Obviously, when you get to the point of getting old enough to dating to find a life partner, that's a good place. But even with that, you have to be careful. Because you can get really connected to someone, and if you don't have these serious conversations, you're opening yourself up to problems later on. So let me give you a practical example of that. We talked about like parenting styles, money, where we wanted to live, career. Like, if she was because she was a nurse, or she still is. I was going to school to become a pastor, and that was actually a problem. That was actually something that took us a while to work through, because her dad was a pastor, and she had seen, I don't like how our family life suffers in light of the life of the church, and I don't want that for my kids. And so that was it.
Could you explain what is in life more he had to do more at the church than tend to his family?
It's just a difficult balance that I think a lot of pastors, or I mean dads in general, right? Just the whole work-life balance.
He's just standing. He's just like, that's a good place to fall.
To creep. Yeah. But yeah, so we kind of had a lot of those serious conversations. Okay, so we match up on this, we match up on that, and then it was like, okay, now it seems like this could be good. Because once again, if it's something as simple as, oh, I want 3 kids versus, oh, I don't want any kids.
Yeah.
That's probably not the person that God is calling you to. That's just,
So sorry to interrupt, guys. Can we wrap it up in 5 so we can get to the lesson?
Yeah.
But we can totally make that another lesson, because dating is really important.
Okay.
I could do a
Oh,
team
yeah.
with Tony
Yeah.
on dating, because I
I'm
got
sorry,
a
I
lot
was
to say
just
about that.
confused.
But anyway,
Going on.
well, let's
What?
try to wrap it up.
We were continuing this, or we were
Oh,
pausing?
I mean, yeah, we can just wrap it up if you want.
Okay.
Do we want to?
Keep going.
We can always do a part 2. We also have a really awesome lesson planned.
Yeah.
We do.
Really thought-provoking lesson.
Huh?
And also, guys, if anyone wants to have some cake before we start the lesson, because Ann Parker made this super beautiful.
Okay, I think we're pausing. Like and subscribe.